Okay, so what I've done is I've put the oil deflector in there and held it in with these 3 lumps of blue tack, and then round the bolts that are protruding through here. And I think that's the only way I'm going to get it in. And there's only one way of fitting these deflector shields. It's difficult to show, but that is lower than that, so the indentation goes towards the bearing, so it goes that way, which is what you probably think it might be the other way to clear the bearing, but it's not. It goes towards the bearing. This deflector shield has got to be trapped between the bearing and the gear, and so that it goes round with the gear. So there's a possibility that this will stop the bearing sitting down properly. Then I won't be able to get the clip in there to hold it all in. So I found this bit of nylon. What I'm going to do once it's in, before it cools down and grabs onto the shaft, I'm going to put that in there, and then I'm going to let the weight of the gearbox push down on here and just hold it there until it cools down and grabs the shaft, and then try to get the ring on. See, quick, get that in there like that. Oh, that's good. It looks as though that's going to go in. Now I've got to stand here for half hour for it to cool down. I've decided to include some clips from when I rebuilt the 4th gearbox, because I took the lay shaft out on that one because I couldn't actually get the input shaft out by heating it up. So what I've done is I've made a dummy lay shaft from the one in the scrap box, and here I'm inserting the needle rollers. So that's the last needle roller, and this is the little washer that holds the needle bearings in, and then I'm holding the thrust washers on with just ordinary bearing grease, and they stick on quite well. And now I'm fitting it into the gearbox, being careful not to dislodge the thrust washer on the other side of the lay shaft. You have to get the thrust washer on the front end round the right way, because there's a tab washer, or there's a tab that locates in the casting. So this is where you can damage the thrust washers, but you just have to be very careful until it goes in nice and easily. So I included that clip just to show people that's how it should be. And the first few boxes that I did, I put the input shaft from within the gearbox, and it did work okay, but that's not really the correct way of doing it. And I've got a dummy one that just fits in there, and it's holding the washers, and it's undersized so it easily slides out. So the whole shaft has been pushed about 1/4 of an inch that way. Now that will allow these teeth to go over that gear, if I can line it all up. That's it, that's gone in. So now I need to fit this shaft from the back because it's a dry fit here, and a smaller dry fit on this side. The original shaft pushes the dummy shaft out and keeps the needles in place. So that's gone in, so them needles haven't moved, they're good. So now I need to do the same this side, making sure this dummy one doesn't come out. That's still quite a way to go. For some reason it's not coming out. Oh, it's going. So it's just started to dry fit now. I can take this shaft out now because it's just starting to dry fit in here as well. Obviously I don't want to go mad with this in case the needles do go out of place somehow, but it's all feeling good. It's going in. Yeah, that's in now, so then the needles are safe. That's it, just under the surface. And that's it. So now I'm going back on to the original rebuild of the original box, the one that's going to go into my car. This is cooled down a little bit now and it's gripped, but while it was cooling down I realised I missed out this. This is what they call a woodruff key, and there's a slot in there to match, and there's a slot in here to match, so that's what drives the speedo gear. So I didn't want that spinning round, so now I've got the task of getting this clip back in here, and it seems quite good. Seems quite a snug fit in there. Well, what I've noticed is the top of this one spline here is lower than the others. It's just roughly machined. Now I've looked at the other shafts, because I've got 4 other shafts there, and 2 of those shafts are the same. So it's not like, I don't think this is a one-off, and I'm wondering if it's to allow this circlip to go on without stretching it too much. I'm not too sure, but it's actually gone on just by me pushing it. So I might put a little bit of oil along here just to lubricate it so it doesn't scratch the shaft, and it's actually pushing. Oh, that's gone. Oh, that went on easier than I thought. It's just clipped in there, although it is spinning. There's a little bit of play there, but that's nothing to do with the clip. That's the woodruff. I'm going to have to put up with that. But I can't feel any play this way, and that's the main thing. Before I can fit this into the tailpiece, I need to put the new seal in, Now this is original type of seal, and it's like a leather material, and you can't use these straight out of the box and put them in there. You have to soak them in oil for at least 48 hours, which I've done that. It's been in ordinary gear oil, EP80 gear oil, and I've just tried that on the end of the prop shaft, and it's a lovely fit on there. So I just need to fit this in here now. Now these are not solid metal like a bearing would be. These are just pressed out of sheet metal. So it's best not to hit here because it's going to dent it. So I found the puller that I used when I did the front suspension bushes is just about the right diameter. So I'm going to be using this and hitting here, not hitting here. Just smeared a little bit of gear oil around there to help it in a bit. I'll put that in over there. It's kind of starting to go. Let's see how this goes. You've always got to think that when I put it in, I knew this was the lower side, so I'll need to hit here first. He says, oh, that's going in nice. I could feel that going in. Yeah, you've got to make sure you get this level. It's not rocket science. That's a nice fit. That's it. And they're designed to be this much up. They don't go all the way down. That's done. I've been about 4 minutes heating that up. It's just to the point where I can't touch it for a long time, but it's not really hot. So now I try it in there. Oh, that's gone in okay. That's good. Now I just need to fit this. I'll let that cool down a bit. The most important thing you've got to remember about new bearings, or any bearing for that matter, is if that's on a shaft, you mustn't hit there, because what's happening is it's hitting against the ball bearings and you're liable to damage the inside track where the ball bearings run. And the same on here, you mustn't hit the shaft to get that in because it's going to damage it. So for instance, if I didn't heat it up, I would need a sleeve to go all the way over so it pushed it on that way. Another little trick I'm doing with these snap rings is I'm putting them around the opposite way till they came out, and the reason is because I can see that there's wear on the inside on this face, so that means it was against the bearing, and on this side it's further out, so that was against the casting. So if I turn it around the other way, I should have another, it should be like a new ring because there's no wear at all. But this is easier said than done to get these in. You've got to try to push that over with a pair of pliers, I think, and also make sure all your tools are clean. Yeah, there's little bits of dirt on there. You don't want any dirt getting in that bearing. This might be off camera, but this is where it's easy to damage the bearing. Oh, that's nice. I just had to look at the book because I've forgotten what way round this goes. And what it is, the selector fork goes towards the back. So it goes that way. So I'm just going to put some... Oh no, that looks dirty first. Hang on. Get this nice and clean. I have to get this all spotless. Right. Put some oil on here. This is EP90 oil, which is thicker than the oil you use for the gearboxes, but it's better to assemble. Okay, so that... I was lucky enough to find this new intermediate gear, and I've got a new synchro ring to go with it. I'm going to use... I've got two of these new rings, but what I found when I put the new ring on the input shaft, there was less of a gap than there is with this one. So what I mean is, what I'm doing is I'm measuring the gap between the ring and the gear. Of course, the bigger the gap the better, because it's going to take longer to wear out. And on some of the rings in the other boxes, they don't work because you can see rub marks around there. Well, that's no good. So this it's about 40 thou. It's actually 40 thou on that one. It's a little bit lower on this one. But I really wanted a new ring to go with the gear because they were wearing together. Oh, another thing to mention is this is brand new. I got it out of the pack and it's all sealed. I know it's brand new. When I put it on the first time and turned it, it didn't feel, it felt gritty. It felt something was hitting. And what it was, there was minute burrs on this face. So I've got these stones, and I've got a fine version. This is 220. I think I've got a 360 grit stone, and just lightly went over with it, and I couldn't even feel the burrs, but there was tiny little burrs around there, little marks, and now it feels nice. This side here is ground. That's a ground face, and this side's not. So it's the ground face that goes against this gear. I haven't actually tried spinning the gear with this on. To see what it feels like. Okay, that's on. These are the needle bearings, and there's always an odd number of bearings. In this case it's 13. And I've put a layer of grease on the inside there and a layer of grease on here. Not too much. You don't want to put too much grease in there because that might stop the oil from circulating inside. But you've got to have grease, otherwise the needle bearings will all fall down and you could end up damaging them when you insert the shaft. Right, I put my finger in there to make sure they're all pressed back. Okay, I put this weld seal on this gasket 5 minutes ago. You're supposed to leave it 5 minutes. So I'm just going to stick that on there. Make sure all the lines line up, all the holes line up. Now this weld seal, I've never used it before. It's supposed to be very good and it never goes hard. Oh, it's a thin layer of weld seal here and on the other side of the gasket. So now it's all ready to go in. So I've got to be very careful with those needles that are in there. It's all in there. I didn't get it on camera because you wouldn't have been able to see anything. I just had to fiddle it on the end of the bench in the end, and you can get it at certain angles and it goes in there okay. Now there's one flaw with this gearbox. All the threads for these bolts and the 3 bolts on here, they're not blind holes, so the oil can make its way through the thread. It'd take a long time, but it would actually happen. It would go through the thread, and then because these are spring washers, it's split, it actually can seep out of here. So I'm using green hematite, which sets hard, in an attempt to stop that happening. That goes at the bottom. This is the bottom. And now it's the final bit to go in, which is the selectors. Now this, you can't actually locate that on the gear because it just falls off, whereas this one won't. It will sit on there. The thing is, this one won't go in, so you have to put this one in first. I did a dry run earlier. This is how you do it. And they're both in neutral. And I've put grease all along this shaft and on here so that this doesn't fall in. So you have to locate this in the first and reverse at the same time as you locate that into the hole. And it's very fiddly. I've done these nuts up there, that's all done. So that's gone down. So it's very fiddly to do, but it can be done. My second and third are in. This is a bit tight on the dowels, but it just pushes in. Now I need to check that this one's working. Right, it's in neutral, so I'll put it in first. Yeah. Reverse. Yeah. Where are we? Second. That don't feel right. Well, yesterday I had trouble getting second and third to engage. and it didn't sound very good. So I took this out again and I turned the fork round the other way. Now I don't know if there's a certain way to put it in because it looks the same both ways to me, but that has solved the problem. It's nice and quiet now. And also, when you're doing the synchro mesh one, you've got to remember that when you press the clutch down, the input shaft is running slower than the output shaft because you're still going along, and this is being turned by the wheels. So when I turn this one, it goes in easy. So that's second, that's neutral, and that's third. So whereas if I try to do it by turning this one and I put this into third, it does go, but it's harder to get it in. It's proven me wrong now. That's harder to get into third, right? But if I turn this, it's easy to get into third. So that's all done now, but I have got another added problem, and that is the dipstick. Now, if you go back onto one of my other videos where I do the front jacking points, you'll see me taking the rubber mat up inside the car, and I had a right trouble because it had gone hard. So the only way to get to this when it's in the car is from the inside of the car. There's an inspection hatch above it. Now I can't get to that inspection hatch because I'm not going to take that rubber mat out ever again. Now I don't know how much you can lift this up before it hits the bodywork, but what I thought could do is remove that bolt and then syringe the oil through that hole. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set this up so it's level. So this is level like this, and then I'm going to measure how much oil I need to put in there to get up to the full mark, and then I will drain that oil out and keep it aside somewhere. So when this is in the car, I can then syringe it into here and it'll be the right level. I've used these two bolts to get the gearbox level this way, and I've used the jack here to get the back the same as the front. So I've measured the centre of the shaft to the bench and the centre of this shaft to the bench, and I know the bench is level, so the gearbox is dead level now. So now I'm going to fill it up. In the book it says it takes 1.42 litres. I bought 2 litres of EP80, and that's what the book recommends, and that's what they used back in the day. Now EP stands for extreme pressure, and 80 is the viscosity, and there's 2 types of this gear oil you can get. You can get EP80 and EP90, but when I was searching on the internet I found some oils that were 80/90, so I take it that's a multi-grade oil similar to the engine oil, whereby when the temperature changes the viscosity doesn't go below 80. I'm not too sure about that, but I think it's always best to go with the original oil that they used, so that's what I'm going to put in. I've just put exactly 1 litre in here, and now I'm a bit confused because it's already on the full mark. I've been thinking this through, and I'm thinking there should be oil here, but really the only way the oil can get into there is by going into that gully and going along and into the rear bearing and along here. So I've just put this electric drill on and ran it for a while, and it's gone down. It's gone down about 1/4 of an inch. Okay, I tipped it over and I let it stand for a while. Then I lowered it down, and I know there's oil in here because it's wet here. So there's definitely oil in here, and I was only able to get 100 millilitres of two of these 250s into here. So it's still short to what the book says. I'll just put this on here and run it for a minute and checked it again, and it's still on the full, hasn't gone down. So it doesn't matter what I do, I can't get more than 1.1 litres in here. Even if I tipped it down, it doesn't make that much difference on the level, or if I tip it up, it still doesn't make much difference. I've made this up so that I can remove this bolt, and then I'm going to see if I can syringe it in from underneath the car without touching the dipstick. Let's just finger tie it in there. Right. Can't see why not. I don't really need to try it, but I will. So there, it works fine. So that's the end of this video. It's all done now. I've drained the oil out as best I can, put it in here, and I'm going to mark it up and keep it, and when it's in the car, put the oil through here, and the level should be correct. Now the next video I'm going to start working on the engine, so that's going to be a series of videos, and I don't know what they're going to be called yet, but the first one I will be doing is checking out the crankcase, which is already on there, but I want to check out the rear oil seal